by recall.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you have a lovely week in franchising. This is the show where we get under the hat of some of the most important topics in franchising. And so each week we take a different topic and we have a bit of a deep, but this is a live show. Well, it's live if it's 5:15 in the UK or 12:15 somewhere in America. And it's live for about the next 45 to 50 minutes. So if you are here live, please put a comment, say hello, and get involved in the conversation, because these conversations are all about you and what you think about these wonderful topics. So please let us know that you are here and we will definitely recognize you. So every week we take a different topic, and this week it's a firm favorite of mine, okay, and it's a real passion of mine. And we're going to be talking about franchise universities and how franchising fits into a formal education or an education. And each week we have a lovely guest. And today we've got two lovely guests, so that's a real bonus there, isn't it? So we've introduced the show, we've introduced the topic. It's time to introduce our wonderful guests. So without further ado, I'd like to first of all introduce you to John Hayes. And he is Titus Chair for the Titus Franchising Academy. And if you don't know all about this, and John's going to tell you all about it in a minute, it's very exciting. And it really is important for us to understand how franchising is going to fit into that educational world. So first of all, welcome, John, to the Franchise Show. Great to have you here.
Great to be here, Harvey. Thank you for inviting us.
You're very welcome. And, well, we have a legend. We have a legend with us. We have Carson Quinn. Now, Carson is a student of franchising. So it's going to be fantastic to get two perspectives on this. You know, we're going to get the perspective of someone who's been in franchising a few years. I won't give your age away there, John, but you've been involved for a few years there, haven't you, John?
Yeah, I've been involved for about almost 45 years. And I don't mind telling you that 10 days ago I turned 75.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah.
Well, you don't look at, you don't
Thank
look
you.
a
That's
day
the best
over.
part of being 75, when people say you don't look it.
Yeah, I would not have guessed. I would have said much younger.
Well, it's fantastic to have you here, John, and to get that perspective of someone who's had all of that experience in franchising. And it's fantastic to have you here as well, Carson. You know, somebody who is new to franchising and somebody who is going to give a different perspective. Look at all those lovely people. Hello.
Yeah, the class doesn't meet until 12:30, but I have some.
I'm saying hello to these people anyway.
Yeah, great.
Just to let you know, John is live in a classroom right now. So it's fantastic to have that environment and to have all those wonderful people there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce a few people who have joined us live today. So let's go for that. We've got Tim Morris. Tim's put evening all. Good to DSO, good to hear. Really looking forward to this one. Well, we're looking forward to it too, Tim. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We have Sanjay, and Sanjay has put, hello, franchise friends from a not so sunny Leicestershire. Now, we're fantastic. People always give a weather update. It's not doing much for the reputation we have here in Britain for talking about the weather all the time, but good to know. Who else have we got? We've got the ever wise Simon Wise. Fantastic to have you here, Simon. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on all things educational and young people in franchising. We've got Penny Hopkinson. Penny is the author of a wonderful book all about franchise manuals and is one of our lovely sponsors. And you know what? Because I'm very clever like this, actually, I'm not that clever. Hold on a minute. There you go, Penny. There is Penny's book, so please have a look at that. Who else have we got? We've got Ed Purnell here. Ed's but evening all. Well, evening to you as well, Ed. Ed does all sorts of wonderful things here in the UK for franchising, social events, round table events, and a podcast as well. And was very much an inspiration for me. So great to have you here. Tim has also put, good evening, everyone from the franchise world. Good to be here. Looking forward to this one. We've got Scott English. A good name from where you're from, of course. Great to have you here, Scott. Scott is one of our media partners, and he is part of Elite Franchise, and looking forward to expanding his business into Canada. It's all about celebrating franchise success, so it's going to be an interesting one. Scott's put, good evening, everybody, from a much sunnier Essex today. Good weather update. Let's have another look. We've got... Oh, great. Well, we've got an interesting comment here from Penny, and we're going to bring that up in a minute. And we've got another great one coming up from Simon. And the last person we're going to recognize today is Barry Price from the Bike Fitters. Great to have you here, Barry. And Barry was a guest on our sister show, Franchising Brand Stories. So there you go. Excellent. Well, look, I'd like to now give you both an opportunity to just make a little introduction to yourself and let us know how you've come into the world of franchising and where you're at. John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Harvey.
Oh, excellent. Well, look, let's let Carson go first.
Go ahead.
Perhaps you could let us know what inspired you to seek out franchising? How did you hear about it? And what's the experience been like?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I learned about franchising through the movie The Founder. And in it, the actor playing Ray Kroc says, well, here's how you can expand. He's talking to the McDonald brothers. And he says, franchising. And really, at that moment in the movie, it clicked, and I understood what franchising really was without the movie really playing out. It was just interesting how that mindset came to me. And I was like, wow, that would be a good idea. And then as the movie played out, you really saw how franchising helped grow the business. Now, that was my introduction to franchising as a concept. And I was really inspired by it because I said, wow, that's how McDonald's became so successful. Is franchising, is really working on those golden arches that they have and replicating that and making that the McDonald's brand, the McDonald's image, or franchising it. When I came to PBA, I was in my intro to business class, and Dr. Hayes came in and pitched the Titus Center for Franchising and the concentration for franchising. And in that class, he did a very good job explaining how Subway got started as a franchise. And I love that story to this day, just as much as I love my introduction to franchising through McDonald's, through the movie. And right then and there, my interest in franchising grew, but I didn't quite commit to it. I actually committed to it the semester after Dr. Hayes pitched, because I gave it some thought. And as I really thought about it and asked around and said, hey, what do you think about franchising? And, have you heard about it? What's your opinion on it? What do you know about it? And I just came to the point where I said, all right, I've gotten different opinions, but I'm going to get into it. That's what I want to do. I want to look at my degree. I want to look at my diploma and say, I graduated with the concentration in franchising. That was my decision. And I have not regretted it since. And I signed up for the concentration in franchising and signed up for classes the next year. It was principles of franchising. So exactly a year since Dr. Hayes pitched the concentration in franchising in my business class, I was taking franchising classes, and it's been great ever since. I got involved in that principles of franchising class and took every opportunity, and I learned so much through that.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. What a wonderful introduction, and it's lovely to hear how a young person can get into our wonderful industry. Well, look, I'd love now, before we get to the questions that have come in from our wonderful audience, I'd now really like to, I mean, most people know the legend that is John Hayes, Dr. John Hayes, of course. But I'd like to make a formal introduction here, and if you could explain a little bit briefly, I mean, it's difficult with that number of years, but how did you come to form and be involved in such a valuable and wonderful community and educational institution?
Short story, Harvey, is I wrote a book. I had degrees in journalism. I was the head of the magazine writing program at Temple University. I was making no money. College professors don't make much money, as you might know. And so I had to supplement my income, and I did that by writing as a freelancer. And I wrote a book that I knew nothing about until I did some research called Franchising: The Inside Story. It was the first book about franchising in the United States. And I would write these books for $10,000 a book. I'd do the research for 6 months. In the case of franchising, I interviewed 100 people. That's the basis from which I wrote the book, Franchising: The Inside Story, early 1980s. That book took off. The media grabbed hold of it. And as I told people, if you own a business and you don't have a book, you're not really in business. And the media will not regard you as an expert. But if you have a book, even though it could be fake news, it was in my case, the media will say you're the world authority on the topic because you're an author. And that's what happened to me. I never worked for a franchise company. I didn't own a franchise, but the media, radio, particularly TV interviews, would say that I was the world authority on the subject, and they would interview me about franchising: The Inside Story. And that resulted in dozens of people calling me and asking me to write a newsletter, to write an operations manual, to come and speak to their franchisees. And that all started in the early 1980s. I left the university, said I'll come back when I can afford a professor's salary, and because this is what I love, to be in the classroom. And I left and built my own business in franchising. And I traveled all over the world, particularly in the UK with the IFA franchise trade missions throughout Europe. Then I ended up living in Kuwait for 7 years, teaching franchising, marketing, and communications at the graduate level at a private university in Kuwait. And then I got a call one day that said this little university in West Palm Beach, Florida, called Palm Beach Atlantic University, not even 4,000 students, got some money from Mr. Titus to start a franchise center to educate young people about franchising, because that's the future. And this Generation Z is the future of franchising. If we don't educate these young folks, where are franchisors going to find franchisees and employees? They're not people who are educated about franchising. Not that you could ever find people who are educated about franchising coming out of college, because universities didn't teach franchising. Today, there are half dozen universities in the United States that have some sort of a franchise program, but we offer a concentration. We also now offer a major, not just in franchising, but we have a major in entrepreneurship and franchising, just started this year. I think it has a dozen students in it already. The concentration in franchising has 60 students, and we've graduated 61 students to date. 9 of them are franchisees today, and 20 some of them work for franchise companies. And with me here in the classroom, I'm actually in the Titus Center franchise classroom, and it's a little early for class. Well, it's 12:30. This is the time class begins. So I do have students here who are studying principles of franchising. And
excellent. Well, look, let's say hello to everyone. Hello, everyone. How are we?
Hey, principles of franchising.
Hello, Harvey. That's Carson Quinn, one of our graduates, up there in the right. So I got students on both sides of the room.
Hello.
We have Yeah, great. We have 20 some students in here.
Fantastic. They're all laughing at my comedy.
Because
British
they,
accent,
the time overlapped, I said, well, I'm not going to miss my class, but I love Harvey, and you booked me like 6 months ago. So I
Well, that's
figured
it.
let's put them together.
I think it's a
Yeah,
great
exactly.
idea. I think it's a great idea.
right.
And now look, we have lots of people here that have made some fantastic comments, but we have a wonderful class here of amazing students. So I really encourage anybody who wants to highlight a topic or ask a question to put their hand up and get involved in this show. So all of you sitting behind, you are all welcome to join in and be part of this show. So
This is only
please,
their second week in a
well,
franchise class. I think this
well,
is their third class with me. So they're very, very eager, and this is a great class that I have, I can already tell, but
fantastic.
they're only beginning to learn about franchising. But I like that the wise man, Simon Wise, is saying a big shout out to all the young franchising minds in the room. You are the future, and to your success. So thank you, Simon Wise. Haven't seen you for a long time, but happy to hear that.
Well, look, without further ado, we've got lots and lots of questions coming in. So we will try and get through all of these. Let's have a look at one from Penny. And Penny's put, given that universities are centres for sharing knowledge, should the operations manual be reinvented as a knowledge sharing environment where team members can learn and grow? Penny writes ops manuals and is very keen to make these rather lengthy documents something that is easier to digest than and that you can put it in ways where a younger generation would be more engaged with that. What's your take on ops manuals and what we can do with that, with maybe QR codes, videos, interactive stuff?
Absolutely. Way beyond my skill level today, Harvey. I wrote operations manuals for probably the first 5 years of my franchise career. It was text and maybe photos and illustrations. Today, people like Penny and others are using video, are using AI as part of their operations manuals, are doing a lot of things that I don't have the skill set to do, but our students will have those skill sets. So yes, I agree that it's got to be more of a sharing environment, but a lot of that is up to the franchisor. Now, I always say that there are good franchisors and there are bad franchisors. And it's the job, if you're buying a franchise, it's your job, not the government's, not the franchisors, for you to go out and find out. And it's pretty easy to do in the United States with all the regulations we have using that franchise disclosure document. It's your job to find out, am I talking to a good franchisor? And by a good franchisor, somebody who understands how operations manuals need to be more than text on a page or a bound book or a three-ring binder that has pages that change every other week or so. I mean, that's what we actually did in the UK as well. We mailed these documents to franchisees. And if Chapter 3 needed a big overwrite, Chapter 3 would be written, newly prepared, and Chapter 3 had to be shipped by mail to all the franchisees. Now, that's been a long time since that's happened, but that's how we did it back in the day. But many franchisors are not good educators. So you've got to find that out up front. And maybe it's part of our job at Titus Center and other places that teach franchising. I have a very large advisory board with more than 100 members who participate here at Titus Center. And that is an opportunity for us to educate them about what they should be doing with their operations manual.
Absolutely. Carson, I just want to bring you in briefly on this to give a younger person's point of view on this in terms of any, let's say, boring old document. But if you're talking about some of these documents, I mean, from your perspective, what's the best way to bring any document to life and make it more engaging for a new generation of franchisors and franchisees?
Of course. Well, I think it's a great question. And one thing that comes to my mind is utilizing online classes. And what I mean by that is, for instance, like a Khan Academy class, where it can walk you through franchising, and operations manuals can be a certain subject of that. A lot of people use Khan Academy to learn and to grow, and some people use it recreationally. And they like that format because there's a video and then there's good questions that are interactive related to those videos. And I think Dr. Hayes is doing something very similar with School. It's SKOOL. And now, while there hasn't been anything necessarily related to the operations manual, what School does is it creates an online community of people who are interested in franchising. And this is where people can share ideas and talk about franchising or business as a whole. And School is very interesting because there are ways for people to be connected and to share knowledge. It's like LinkedIn, but it is very specific to the Titus Center for Franchising. It's very specific to those interested in franchising, and it's a very unique format for people to share ideas in videos, in text.
Yeah.
So those are some ways that I would say are very interesting to Gen Z in particular. Are those interactive videos, are those interactive communities where people can actually look through documents in a very fun, bite-sized way.
Yeah, great. No, fantastic. Thank you, both of you, for addressing that question so well.
Let me clarify that it is school, SKOOL.com, and then you search for the Titus Center community. We only started this some weeks ago. We're building it to 100 members. We're about there. And then we're going to put a lot more content on there. And it is free. So it's a great time. It'll always be free for the first 100, for sure. But there will be some courses that will be online courses that you take for a certificate as well.
Okay.
So
that's it.
It's a great way for people to meet one another from across the world and communicate with one another at school.com.
And the certificate, I'm glad you said that. That is a good point. Is achieving that certificate at the end. You can put that on your LinkedIn, and it's a little badge that you can show and say, you know, I did that, and that will add as a credential to somebody.
Yeah. Love it. Let's just read out a few comments. We've got so many comments coming in. I knew this would be a subject that the industry would be passionate about, because we really need, as an industry, to encourage young people to understand what this is. And it's a passion of mine. And it should be a passion of our industry, and I'm glad it is. Jack Wilson, I'm sure you both know Jack, put, love the franchise subject matter and entrepreneurship, I always struggle with that word, curriculum in a growing number of universities, and especially how John is doing it. Yeah, well, bravo. I agree with that. Let's take a comment here, and I will go back. I appreciate I've jumped ahead here in time. But Simon has put, what does a Gen Z, or Z, however we're going to pronounce that.
Gen Z is how we pronounce it, yeah.
That's it. Well, look, you're the guest. What does a Gen Z look for in a franchise? What would the students in the room look for in a franchise opportunity? Great question. Okay. What do you make of that?
We'll see if somebody can tell us that at this early stage. Anybody want to comment about what would you look for in a franchise? If you're going to buy a franchise, this is only your third session. So if you've got a comment or a suggestion. Are you hearing that?
Yeah, a good system in place. Great point. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm happy that they've already picked that up. That I teach that franchising is all about the system. It's only going to be as good as the system, and the franchisor's ability to teach the system and transfer the knowledge to the franchisees. So I'm glad you picked that up, Nina. Right? Good.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Fantastic.
Want to comment?
Great.
Where is our dancer? Tell them your story.
Well, Well, my mom owns a dance studio back in Nebraska, and my dream is to help run it and franchise it.
Fantastic.
So she wants to be a
Love that.
franchisor. Now, that only happens about less than 10% of the time with our students. 90% of our students want to own a business of their own, and preferably a franchise. But I've had one franchisor already, one young man who teamed up with Ray Titus and created a brand, a business coaching brand that's called Prevere, that has a half dozen or 10 franchisees. And this was created in a collaboration. I always put my students in front of, or I put 4 students at a time in front of my advisory board. And the students get a chance to tell their story and what they do and why they're interested in franchising. And this young man had an idea for franchising a business that he was already doing online and making $10,000 a month for himself. And Ray Titus picked up on that immediately and invited the young man to come over to his offices. And within about 6 months, they rolled out a plan for this new brand called Prevere. So that's happened once so far, but most of our students are going to pursue becoming franchisees.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love both of the comments there from your wonderful students. Both the fact that it's recognized early on that you're buying a proven system. Many people, certainly talking here in the UK, you'll go to university and you have 2 options that you feel are open to you. Number 1, you get a job. Number 2, you start your own business. Nobody's aware of something that provides something in the middle of those 2 things and gives you a bit of support. Running your own business, it can be a lonely business. It can be a tough business, and if you've got the support of other franchisees and the franchisor around you, it's really important for that to become an option. And I love that story. What was the name of the young lady who said about the dance school as well?
I'm Ava.
Ava.
Yeah, Eva. Well, look, that's fantastic to hear, and I love that because if you've got a business or you've got a family member that's got a business, and then you can do all of this studying and then apply franchising to these existing businesses. I love that. I think that's fantastic, and that's the sort of thing that young people can do with these qualifications. So thank you, all of you. Please at any point join in and add your comments. I love that you're all here, and let's have a little look at what we've got coming in here.
Another layer to Ava's story. I only met her a couple of weeks ago when she had her parents here on campus. So her mother has the dance studio. Ava is a very skilled dancer from that studio. Ava wants to franchise the business so that they can scale that business. And her parents are very supportive of what she wants to do. So, and that's typical of our students. We're a private university in West Palm Beach. And I've taught at 5 universities. You don't get students like the PBA student. We have exceptional students here. And I don't know if that's just in franchising, because I don't know what they get in biology or nursing or any of the other schools. But in franchising, I can go to war with my groups of students.
Absolutely. You're stronger together. It's all about nurturing the people around you, and that's what any good business owner, any good franchisor is about. You take the people around you, you nurture them, your franchisees, you make them successful, you make them happy, and it's the same there. The strength of the legendary John Hayes is the people sitting behind him and the person sitting above to the right. And that's what's so wonderful, to continue franchising being taught and people being inspired by it and taking it beyond where it is right now, and there's clearly a class full of wonderful minds that are going to have fantastic ideas, into the future. So it's fantastic. Let's I could continue talking to everyone in the class for a long time here, but let's have a little look at some comments by our wonderful audience. because this is all about you as well. Tim's put a question for both. How do you suggest the education of franchising to young people and the wider public can be expanded? This is a great question, Tim, and it's a question I'm passionate about. And as John knows, it's a question I'm actively involved in trying to solve that one. But what do you make, first of all, John, on that? And then we'll come to you, Carson.
Franchising is a difficult sale. Shouldn't be, because that's where the future opportunities are. Here in the United States, we have 3,500 plus or minus franchise brands that are looking for employees who know about franchising, and also, of course, looking for franchisees. And then there's the need for suppliers from marketing and all the other sections where we need legal help. We need people who understand technology to support franchisors. So it's a big mistake not to embrace franchise education. But historically in the United States, there are business school deans on the record saying that franchising is not a real business. It's a copycat business. Somebody gives you the script. Well, hallelujah that somebody gives you the script, because in this country, most entrepreneurs, 85%, according to our Small Business Administration, over 5 years, 85% of non-franchise startups will fail in the United States. Well, who needs that, or who wants that? Only the diehard entrepreneur who can go out and seek more money. But that's not what my students want. That's not what their parents want. In some cases, they want to have good, stable jobs. They can get that right out of the door with their concentration in franchising. When they graduate, typically my students will have 2 to 3 offers when they graduate with a concentration in franchising. So getting people to understand franchise business is not easy for anyone. And praise God that somebody will give you a script of what to do. The
Absolutely.
system is all written. All you got to do is follow it. Now, if that makes you a Mickey Mouse operator or less than an entrepreneur, so be it. But a lot of those entrepreneurs are in bankruptcy over and over again, while our franchise owners are successfully building.
Completely agree with you, John. Completely agree. I like there that you said that, people get offers, because doing a degree in franchising, there's a very obvious route there to what you could do afterwards and where you could take things. I'm going to take it to Carson, if I could, please. What's your plans when you've finished, or anybody else in the class here today? What is your goal? Is it to be a franchisee, a franchisor, and what do you expect when you finish your university education?
Of course. So my goal is to become a multi-unit franchisee. I admire the people who have such a large portfolio, such as one individual, Greg Flynn, who just owns so many Taco Bells. I think it's outstanding. And I admire those people because they are entrepreneurs in their own way. It's how do you manage all these different franchises? You are a franchise entrepreneur in a sense. You're a franchisee entrepreneur in a sense of having so many underneath your belt. How do you manage that? And a lot of these people will have things under their own name, and it's their franchise group in a way. It's their portfolio, and it's your business to manage it. And I like that idea. To me, that sounds like a very good way to not only expand businesses that produce for society, but a good way for you to invest in something that you're interested in. People like entrepreneurship. I think it's a fun thing. You might as well do something fun with your life and make money while doing it. And it's enjoyable for everyone involved. And so I see the benefit that franchising brings to society. And that's something that I want to contribute to.
Absolutely. Going back to you now, John, and sticking with this question, and we've got a few other questions to bring in here, questions from Ed and questions from Jit, and they will come up, I assure you, everybody. But the element that I want to focus on here with you, John, is about expansion. You mentioned that there were 6 universities or 6 educational entities that were offering franchising in some way. Are they all of them in the US?
Yes, the ones that I'm referring to, University of Louisville has a very good program, including at the graduate level, and they're backed by Yum Brands, Taco Bell, KFC. And Yum gave University of Louisville $100 million for franchise education. That's the largest amount. Here, we got an initial injection of $1.5 million, but the Titus Center doesn't get any of that money. It goes into the university's endowed fund. This year, I'm supposed to get some interest from that $1.5 million, but I haven't seen that yet. Meanwhile, franchisors and franchisees, suppliers are so keen to provide franchise education. And it's not just in the United States. Every place I go in the world, in a couple of weeks, I'll be in Croatia again. I'm going to speak at the CarWiz International Franchise Convention. I was there with Carson, by the way, on our study tour in May, and met with local franchisors who want to support franchise education. There's a university there, the Zagreb School of Economics and Management. I'm going to teach online for them in the spring coming up. In our spring semester, I'll teach a course on franchising for students in Zagreb, Croatia. So it's all over. It's certainly in the UK. The University of Roehampton has been a partner school to PBA. Our students study there. Occasionally their students come here. Seems much more interesting for our students to go over to London to study for a semester. And they're working on the franchise hub that they want to introduce and involve the franchisor and the supplier and the franchisee community. Because you can't do this education without some money. You need some support. And I'm very, very fortunate that our board gives money every year. Each member of the board contributes so that, for example, in a couple of weeks, Franchise Expo South, big exposition in Fort Lauderdale, which is, let's say, 45 minutes down the road from us. My students, any of them who want to go to that, can get their mileage paid through the Titus Center and get up to $50 to have lunch for themselves. Right. So last year I had 22 students attend that expo and attend free conferences that are there. So it's only because of the board that we have that allows us to take, for example, 4 students to the International Franchise Association convention in February, to Springboard, which happens every year in Philadelphia. We'll have 2 students who will attend that. I try to generate the funds that help us underwrite programs for our students to get internships, ultimately for our students to get jobs if that's what they want.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And what I found really interesting about what you said there is that so many franchisors are keen to support in various different ways the education of young, new potential franchisees. Right. And actually, they are more commercially astute or accessible. You know, they've got those funds to be able to support the industry. You know, the process of creating a course and putting it into a formal classroom in an educational setting is one thing, but perhaps it's the franchisors of each country that should perhaps take the lead in financing and driving that forward.
Absolutely. Suppliers as well. This is in their best interest.
Absolutely.
Franchisees who bring my students in to do an internship. My students have to complete a 90-hour franchise internship. I think the great Carsoni has done 5 of those internships. Is that right, Carson?
I've done many internships, 5 in total throughout my university education. I've done 3 franchising ones, 3 related to franchising. One of them was at Chick-fil-A, as a matter of fact. And that's a great way to answer Tim's question, going way back to that, that is a great way to expand knowledge to the Gen Z community, or the group, I should say. I don't say community, because internships matter. We love internships. And I think what this podcast is doing right now is a great opportunity to expand knowledge. Gen Z loves podcasts. Gen Z loves audiobooks. They like these media formats. And Dr. Hayes does very well at this on LinkedIn, is posting this short form content, very much like it's on TikTok. TikTok is a great way to reach out to Gen Z, or Instagram, Instagram Reels or something of that nature. And Delaney, I want to give a shout out to Delaney, who is very much a star student at the Titus Center for Franchising, and is a woman in franchising. Women in franchising, women in business is a very interesting topic. It's on top of everyone's list, or many people's list, or in top 5. And she does a very good job at reaching out to the Gen Z on TikTok or on Instagram. And I think a way to further this, where we are now, we have these things now. I think a way to advance that would be to have a dedicated business woman in franchising influencer, in a way.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. We're starting to come to the end of this. This is absolutely, it's got to be a regular thing, because the passion that is being shown by our community, this conversation has to continue. And in 15 minutes, we're never going to get to the end of it. And I'm so sorry if we don't get to your questions, but it's been fantastic. But we have a bit of time left. We've got 5 or 10 minutes. So let's continue. I'm going to bring up this one because it's a nice interactive question. And because we rarely get the chance to have a wonderful classroom of fantastic people on our show, let's take this one. And Scott has put, be interesting to get a raise of hands in the room amongst the students from what you have learned so far. And I know you're all at the beginning of this, but look, how many of you would like to start a franchise, or how many of you would like to go into a full-time job role? It's an interesting question. And what do you make of putting that as a poll to your fantastic?
Yeah, sure. We can ask them. They may not know yet, because remember, this is their 3rd class in franchising.
Absolutely, yeah.
By a show of hands, how many of you are going to look for a job when you graduate? Yeah, just put your hands up, and then how many of you want to franchise a business or become a franchisee? How many are looking at that? Yeah. So, they generally, and I only showed you one side of the room, all the ladies, most of the ladies, except for 2, 3 over on that side with all those gentlemen, another one here, but a bunch of ladies on this side of the room. And I saw that one of the comments said, how thrilled they are to see so many young women. And it wasn't always this way. This is my 8th year with the Titus Center. And in the early days, probably 9 men, 1 woman in those early days. And about 3 years ago, that started to even out, where I have about 50-50 young women to young men in our franchise classes. That's great to see, because there are lots of opportunities for young women, and they don't always think of it on their own. So we promote that heavily.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, any diversity in any sense, getting a broad mixture of opinions from all sorts of different angles is really important. It's vital for our businesses. And Cynthia here has put, women in business owners is a great focus. Wish I had this concentration when I was at PBAU. Let's have a look at one more question. I could genuinely go on with this show for the next 3 or 4 hours. It's as good as I ever imagined it would be. And I really hope we can do this again, because we're not going to get to all these questions. So I apologize ahead of time. But let's take one from Simon. Dr. John, are you an advocate for any specific schemes to get more Gen Z into business ownership through franchising? Shared equity schemes, for example, between franchisor and franchisee? This is a great question. And perhaps Carson could also chip in on this one. As a young person, when you're going to become a franchisee, one of your barriers to entry is going to be capital. It's generally the way that young people don't have huge amounts of money to throw about, because they're spending it on good fun things, aren't they?
Yeah.
What's your take on that, Carson, in terms of finding that capital to invest in a franchise business, at least that first one?
Well, one thing I can mention is how through the Titus Center for Franchising, there are opportunities to even get the franchise fee waived. And I know that was an opportunity last year. And that was one way to introduce young people into franchising. Now, how do we get this money to do it? I think one way to expand the introduction would be to talk about the loans that we can get. We can get SBA loans. And we can also talk about the idea of saving money when you're in college. I think saving money is very important. I know it's a lot of money to get into franchising, but not all franchises are $100,000, upwards of $100,000 to get in. There are some that are very low. You can easily buy some with some money saved up, or with money that you have saved up plus a loan, and that can actually get you quite far. It may not get you to McDonald's level. It may not get you to Burger King. It may not get you there. But that's not franchising. That is franchising, but that's not all of it. I mean, that's just one small portion. There are many other franchises out there for you to get started to get you to that level. So you can eventually have the money to own 2, 3, 4 McDonald's, or however many you want to own. Even if you want to get to that point, and maybe not even, you can easily own a franchise when you're young. You can do one in your 20s, and you can actually get some friends together and to get the money to buy a franchise. And some of these they're not that expensive. When you really dig deep and look and ask questions and ask around, the opportunities will present itself.
Yes, absolutely. Love that. John, perhaps before we move on to this next question, and we are running out of time, but perhaps you could give, because I think that this is an important question when young people are looking at franchising and they look at that. I love the fact that sometimes maybe that franchise, that upfront franchise fee, there may be programs for that to be waived, or and I'll go back to Simon's question because he talked about shared equity. What's been your experience of how young people can overcome that capital investment challenge?
So first, I want to talk about the linguistics. In the United States, the word scheme is a negative. So I want to make sure my students realize we're not talking about anything negative. But in the UK world, a scheme is a business opportunity or a franchise opportunity. Schemes here, we don't talk about schemes.
I've had that experience of making that.
I was going to say that. I was like, we can go on Reddit and figure that out and say, all right, a scheme. Yeah, we're not going there.
So a few things here, and I'll be happy to respond to as many of these questions after the fact as I can.
Fantastic.
Because I'm overwhelmed by all these questions you've generated here, Harvey. It's been terrific. And I know we're going to run out of time. The 9 students who became franchisees, 2 were in a partnership, so they pooled their money, but they bought franchises for less than $100,000. All of my franchisee graduates are in service businesses. No one is in a food industry, more expensive. And services are less complicated, and there's a great demand today in the United States, as throughout the world, for service businesses. We've also been very fortunate. We have 130 some on our advisory board, including franchisors, and some of those franchisors have made offers to my students. They waive the $40,000, $50,000 franchise fee because they know my students are going to step in with a world of knowledge more than the other franchisees. My students will know more than a first-year franchisee will know when they graduate from this program. Well, that's valuable, and franchisors are willing to help these young people get into franchises as a result. Some have family money. Some do with their parents sign for an SBA loan, and they get that. We've also had not a board member, but a friend of the Titus Center who has a pot of money that he will loan to my graduates. It's not always the most favorable rates, but one of my graduates has borrowed from that fund to get into a franchise. So there are ways to do it. Most of my students are going to, first of all, get some experience in franchising. So they're going to go get a job and figure out along the way, where do they want to be a franchisee?
Yeah,
Definitely.
fantastic, and great question there, Simon, and thank you, John, for letting us know that you can go back and answer some of these questions after today's live, because we've got so many. But you know what? It's confirmed to me that this is a subject that we're all passionate about. And I'm going to ask you live on air anyway. We need to do a repeat of this, because and make this a regular thing. And I don't mean just you, John, and you, Carson, but I mean all the wonderful people behind you, because this was an incredibly interactive and wonderful thing to do. And it would be fantastic, actually, to see how this class of wonderful people progresses as the months pass. And you know, and how their views change and their experiences grow. So let's do this again, and involve our wonderful community. And each time we grow and learn together, and get some fantastic new opinions. So before we get on to who's on next week, and those sorts of formalities, I would just like, first of all, I'm going to come to you, Carson. If people want to get hold of you, connect with you, learn and share from your experiences, what's the best way to do that for you first?
Definitely. Please find me on LinkedIn. You'll find me at Carson Quinn. And if you really type in Carson Quinn, Palm Beach Atlantic University, then I'll really come up. You have my profile featured on the picture, so I know that's accessible. And please reach out to me. And I'd be happy to go on anybody's podcast and continue this conversation in their podcast with their own set of questions, their own format, however they want to approach this topic. And I would love to do a repeat of this, Harvey, where we have this friendly chat and have the interactive questions. I think you have a wonderful setup, and I really do appreciate you letting us come on here. So yes, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to talk to anybody.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Carson. And now to you, John. If somebody out there is looking to find out more information about the academy, and how do they get involved, how do they enroll, you know, how do they support you, what's the best way to do that?
Easy. Just go to Titus, Titus Center.com. And my Calendly is on TitusCenter.com. There's a lot of information about Titus Center there, about our students, testimonials from our students about what they think about the program. Our advisory board is all listed there on TitusCenter.com. Our upcoming events, Selling Franchises Summit, will be at January 23-24. That's a 2-day event that we professionals come in and teach how do you sell franchises today.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Easy to get in touch with me, and I look
fantastic. What I will do as well, to anyone listening now or in the future, we will include a link in the comments and in the show notes, so that you can get hold of both John or Carson as well. So that does bring us to the end of today's episode. I would first of all like to thank our wonderful audience and all of their questions and the way that you're getting involved and engaged. This show is all about you. And I'm proud to be a part of it. And thank you for taking your time to be here. I'd also like to thank Carson and John for their time today to spend here at the Franchise Show. It's fantastic learning from you both. And finally, I'd like to thank your wonderful class, all the people behind you. It's inspiring to see young people in our industry. And thank you for spending and your class time with listening to a silly chap in a hat going on. But it was great to be with you all as well, and keep up the good work. You're doing fantastic. There we go. We are at the end. So next week on the Franchise Show, please join us. We are speaking to Michael Bonham, and we're going to be talking all about franchise resales. It's a really interesting subject. It's, you know, your exit strategy and what you do when you've come to the end is something that's important to discuss at the beginning. So please join us for that conversation. That will be next Tuesday, the 3rd of September, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST. And also join us for our sister show. And that's on Thursday, the 5th of September. And that's Franchising Brand Stories. That's the show where we get under the hat of some of the top brands in franchising here in the UK. And we're going to be starting with a fantastic one. We're going to be hearing all about Caremark. So that is Thursday, 5th of September, Franchising Brand Stories. Please join us at 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST for that conversation. So until next time, my friends, have a fantastic week ahead and take very